Hello and welcome to my virtual deck showcase, my virtual deck list, as they call it here on YouTube. On my so if you have watched my previous video, you're kind of confused at this moment as to why I would make a virtual deck showcase, considering that I kind of bashed Virtual World. Well, the reason for that is because I am a big fan of Virtual World. Yes, sir. Just like Star Wars fans hate Star Wars, I hate Virtual World, but I still come back to this deck. I own this deck actually in real life. However, I don't possess a webcam, and my phone's camera is absolutely pathetic, and I'm really self-conscious about that thing. So I sincerely apologize to that I can't do this in person. But I also thought that Edo Pro would be a better way to showcase this deck, because I could do, well, test hands, Edo Pro feature. So I'm going to be explaining everything about this deck, everything that I can imagine needs to be explained. I will even be explaining the virtual cards themselves, and I'm also going to explain why I don't play some cards, why I play other cards, and so on and so forth. So the virtual world deck, right? And like every virtual deck, you have to run 3 of every card. But hold up, I'm missing a card, right? I'm missing a card, and what card am I missing? Virtual World Autoheim Toto. Yes, Toto. Now, a lot of people are going to be confused as to why I am not running a copy of Virtual World Autoheim Toto, and the rationale behind that is because, well, I'm already running 42 cards, and I refuse to take out the cards that I should take out to make this less than 40 to justify running Toto. And also, I don't like Toto. Toto has an issue, in my opinion, where she is just a brick if she's in the same room with Nyan, and Nyan is always better Toto. Also, I'm running 3 copies of every single Virtual World, and the reason I'm running a copy of 3 copies of every single copy of Virtual World is because of Pot of Desires. Now, you don't really need to run 3 copies of every card with Pot of Desires, but then you are playing a really dangerous game, especially because you can banish quite a few good pieces of your combos. So if you were to banish, for instance, 2 copies of Chuchi, you'd kind of be screwed. If you were to banish 2 copies of King Long, that wouldn't be as bad as banishing 2 copies of Chuchi, and I'll explain why when I come to the Zolkin combo. So we have 3 copies of every single virtual, and if you don't know what they do, I'm just going to run it down really easily. The virtual worlds have the ability to target one of their own virtual cards, whether that be spell, trap, or monster, on the field, and then they can send a virtual world card of different type, and most of them have additional effects depending on the monster that they are. So for instance, Lily is the setup. Well, most virtual world cards are set up already. Virtual World Kirin Lily is the best setup card. I don't know how else to explain it. Basically, Virtual World Kirin Lily can do setup en masse. So the thing about Lily is she can target, for instance, say you want to target Chuchi, she could send King Long, and she could send a monster. Now, the thing about sending virtual cards is I only tend to send 2 cards to the graveyard if I have to send a virtual monster, and that is usually either Nyan or Gigi, and the preference is always on Nyan, not Gigi. The reason for this is because you need Gigi in the graveyard if you want to do certain other plays. For instance, my dragon plays come a lot easier when you have Nyan in the graveyard, and if you have Nyan in the graveyard already and you have Lao, you're going to need Gigi in the graveyard. Now I'm already confusing quite a few people. I think a lot of people watching this are going to be a little bit confused after that kind of tedious explanation, so I won't get too into that right now. I will, however, be discussing that further on when I show combo ads. So then we have Virtual World Roshi Lao. Lao is the extender. You don't want to start off with him. You don't even want to be in the middle with this guy. You want to do this guy at the very end, and the reason for that is Lao, on top of the original effect, can also reborn a monster. So he's best used as an extender, best used when you want to do a little bit more, or you need to further your plays when certain things go wrong. He can also bait, but I wouldn't recommend using Lala as bait. I'd recommend using something like GG as bait, or King Long or something like that. You really need Lala, basically. And then we have Virtual World Mayheim Lulu. Now Lulu is the best card in the best Virtual World monster by far, because Lulu both has a setup and she is a searcher. So Lulu has the unique effect where if you were to target a virtual card and you were to send, say you were to target Chuchi and you send King Long, you could now search a virtual world monster. Pretty good, right? And it is amazing. Virtual Lulu is absolutely necessary for this deck to function. You desperately need her. Playing without Lulu is like highly difficult. I would not recommend it. The issue, of course, with Lulu is that she is a very good choke point for other decks to follow. Now, a lot of people will simply wait Gamma on Lulu, wait Ash on Lulu even, because Lulu leads to a lot of problems for other players, and because of that, they need to get a handle on her real quick, because she can get really out of hand with what she does. So we have Virtual Mayhem Lulu, which we of course play 3. Then we have 3 copies of Virtual World Heim Nyan. I can't pronounce her name and I apologize. So we run 3 copies of Virtual Nyan, and there are some things you need to realize about this. You do not need to play 3 copies of Virtual Nyan. However, again, we are playing 3 copies of Pot of Desires. Now, you could play 2 copies of Virtual Nyan realistically, but I'm playing 3 copies because I refuse to play Tautau, and I have 3 copies of Pot of Desires. Now, if you don't know what Nyan's effect is, she doesn't have the effect that the other virtuals have, where she can target him, a virtual card to send, and so on and so forth. No, Virtual Nyan has the ability that when you normal summon or special summon a level 3 monster, then you can special summon Nyan. Now, the thing about special summoning Nyan is that it does not have to be a virtual card that is summoned or special summoned. So for instance, you could normal summon Ash Blossom and then Nyan could trigger. The other thing about Nyan that you have to realize is Nyan can only activate when it is already in the graveyard, when that monster is special summoned or normal summoned. So for instance, you cannot send Nyan with Virtual Lulu and then activate Nyan's graveyard effect. Nyan has to already be in the graveyard prior to the activation of the effect, and the reason for this is because virtual monsters, Lily, Kirin, Lily, Lao, Lulu, and Gigi, their effects to send and special summon themselves happen at the exact same time according to Konami's rulings. So because of that, Virtual Nyan cannot trigger. The other little caveat to notice is that if you were to send Nyan and Lao were to special summon Gigi, then Nyan could trigger, because again, the second part of every virtual card's effect happens after the special summon. So that's a little bit of a caveat to understand. So basically, if Lao were to send Nyan and special summon Gigi from the graveyard, then Nyan could trigger, basically, because once Nyan is in the graveyard, then the special summon of Gigi occurs. And speaking of Gigi, let's go on to Virtual. Oh wait, no, I'm getting ahead of myself. Nyan also has another effect, by the way, in that if she were to use her effect to special summon herself, she will have to be banished when she leaves the graveyard, and that's a very big thing to realize, and I'll discuss that when I go to the Sulking combos. But the other thing also to notice is that when Nyan is banished, not just by her own effect, she basically has the ability to recycle anything in the banish pile, and that doesn't and that is not reserved to virtual cards. She could target anything in your banish pile. There could be face down cards, and I would always recommend special recycling face down cards, because you give your opponent less information on what you're doing, and that's going to be quite easy considering that we are running Pot of Desires, so this can come up. And I would always recommend always shuffling back face down cards over cards that are known. And another reason for this is also because of Chuchi. You always want to keep Chuchi alive, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. I apologize. So then we have Virtual ZG GG. I apologize for mispronouncing this. I'm not at all pronouncing any of these cards right. So GG. A lot of people don't like GG. They think GG is a waste of time, but GG is actually very important, and the reason for this is GG can circumvent a very big issue that we will have with this deck, and that is hand advantage. Virtual goes through the end fairly quickly, and that is majorly due to the fact that we require 2 card combos, and the other fact that King Long requires a discard, and you always want to use King Long. And Zhuan Wu requires a discard, but Zhuan Wu is not used nearly as much as King Long. So GG has the effect where at the end phase you can recover one of your virtual monsters, except GG of course at the end phase. You never want to forget this, by the way. I know I've seen a lot of players forget that you can actually recycle with GG. And the thing is, you do not want to forget this. He comes in really, really important, and GG usually leads to getting Lulu, because while Lulu can just go off by herself, well, not herself, since all monsters require 2 God summon. And then we're going to running through the basic hand taps. We have 3 Ash Blossom, 3 Gamma, 1 Driver. Gamma is particularly important. I would say that you need Gamma, and the rationale behind this is that Gamma, if you were to activate Lulu targeting, say for instance Chuchi, and your opponent were to activate Ash or Gamma, Gamma comes in extremely clutch here. The other thing to notice is that you can swap out Ash Blossom. I probably will swap her out after this, because I'm beginning to think that she's kind of lackluster. She's the only high impact matchup where Ash Blossom actually comes into play is when you utilize her against Shaddoll Invoked. But then again, that's a really iffy matchup, and I'll discuss that a little bit later also. I am really saying that I'm going to do a lot of things later, and I apologize. But if I were to discuss everything that came to mind right now, we would be here for a while. So I don't want to elongate this video anymore. I know you people have rather busy days. So we have 3 copies of Virtual City Kowloon. Now Kowloon has a unique effect that once you activate it, it can place a Virtual World Gate card onto the field. Yes, by the way, Kling, Kinglong, Chuchi, and Xuanwu are called Virtual World Gates. So, Virtual World City Kowloon has the effect where you can place these cards directly upon the field, and then it has additional effects depending on the number of Virtual Gates cards currently on the field. So, and by the way, this checks after resolution. So once Virtual World City Kowloon activates and places, immediately after that it will check to see if you fulfill any of these conditions, and these effects are not optional. That is also why Virtual World City Kowloon is called Virtual World City, because if this card was Virtual World Gate Kowloon, then it would activate its first effect fairly regularly, as in it would always activate. So these effects are not really important, because you probably are never going to see them except for the first one, which usually comes in the late game. The first one is that once you have 2+ Virtual World Gate cards, all Virtual World monsters you control gain 200 attack this turn. Not really spectacular, and usually this comes in only clutch when you try to boost Shenshin to 3000 attack, which will kind of come up. Shenshin is kind of not that beefy. And then the second effect is that you send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard, and not going to come up again. And the fourth effect, which will never come up, and if it does, I will pay you $5. Special summon up to 4 virtual monsters with different names from your extra deck. Now, these effects only exist to provide Virtual City Kowloon with counterplay. The thing is, because of these, the first effect that the second effect that you can send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard, this card can be countered by Ash Blossom. Now, Virtual City Kowloon being countered by Ash Blossom was not unplanned. It was Konami trying to deliberately give this card counterplay. I don't know why they would decide to do this, but and the rationale behind why it can be negated with Ash Blossom is the same rationale why Shaddoll Fusion can be negated with Ash Blossom. The Shaddoll Fusion's effect can be negated with Ash Blossom, even though you don't possess, your opponent doesn't possess extra deck monsters. So now we get into the big thing, and that is Pot of Desires. Now, the thing about Pot of Desires is that it's not necessarily needed. Theoretically, you could play this deck without Pot of Desires. You could also run Pot of Prosperity, or you could even run both. I have seen topping lists in extravaganzas running 3 copies of Desires and 3 copies of Prosperity. Now, the reason why I'm saying that the reason why I chose to run 3 Pot of Desires is primarily because I did not want to run Prosperity, and I did not want to run Prosperity with Desires because I do not like that combination. I'm more so fearful of the bricks, and I'm more so fearful of drawing into Prosperity with Desires. Now, Desires is in my opinion a little bit better than Prosperity, primarily because Desires can circumvent the issue that we will have later on, and that issue is that we will be losing hand advantage, as I said previously. And remember, Virtual loses hand advantage primarily because when we play, we need 2 card combos, and the requirement to have 2 card combos means that our hand gets emptied extremely fast, and King Long requires a discard for its effect. So does Wanwu. We will usually end the turn, if we do the full combo that we want to do, with at least 2 cards or maybe even 3 cards, which is kind of lackluster because 2 of those cards usually won't even be a hand trap. So we have to make the best out of our turns, and that's why our turns are so spectacular and need to be so important, which is why Desires comes in, why I play Desires. Yeah, basically that's why you play Desires. If you play Prosperity, it becomes a little bit more tricky. Sure, you have more consistency, but the issue comes in that you don't have the same you don't have a means of circumventing the issue that I already mentioned. And Prosperity can kind of be awkward sometimes. I don't want to get really into it, but the fact that you can't draw and so forth really counteracts with Coral Dragon. And Coral Dragon comes up quite a bit when you're doing the Zolkin combo. But again, I will get to that. Then we have Dark Ruler No More. Now, Dark Ruler No More in the main deck is kind of weird. And the reason I have Dark Ruler No More is simply because I want to go into Fortune or Utopic Beyond, into Guy Dragon, into Zeus basically. This is mainly for Zeus setup because there are a lot of boards that I just can't win against, even with King Long. Even though King Long can negate, it's very hard to do certain things without Dark Ruler No More going second anyway. I always recommend going second cards with Virtual World, just because if you draw them first turn, well, then they become discard fodder. If you go second, then they become invaluable. So yeah. Then you have Emergency Teleport. Now, Emergency Teleport is a very important card, kind of. You basically, Emergency Teleport just reads Special Summon Lulu or Nyan from the deck. Basically, that's it. Because they're the only two psychic monsters we have. So you summon Lulu if you need a tuner, you summon Nyan if you don't need a tuner, or you need Nyan in graveyard to utilize that effect again. Virtual requires quite a lot of forethought, so keep that in mind, but we'll get into that when I do test hands. We then have Virtual King Long, and Virtual Get King Long is how do I explain this? Virtual Get King Long is very much a core of this deck. You need Virtual Get King Long, and the reason for this is that you need a search. Okay, Virtual King Long has two very good effects. The first effect is that you can banish one virtual card from your graveyard, then target one monster on the field, negate its effect, and its effect until the end of this turn, even if this card leaves the field. So even if King Long leaves the field, that monster will be negated. And the second effect is you can banish this card from your graveyard, add one virtual monster from your deck to your hand, then send one card from your hand to the graveyard. Okay, so let's get into this card. The first effect is also good. You won't use it that much because again, on your first turn you don't want to place this card really. It's kind of better to always place Chuchi, because Chuchi, if your virtual monsters target Chuchi, they can send King Long. Now, the thing about King Long is, on its first effect anyway, is that usually the first effect going second is paired with Kowloon. So you will activate Kowloon, place King Long, and then activate King Long's effect to banish Kowloon, and then that will usually bait a negate or bait a pop from your opponent. So that's pretty good. Also, King Long is really good into matchups like Shadow, because King Long can negate Shadow Winder. Very good card, by the way. Very good card. The second effect is where it comes iffy. Now, the card effect to banish itself and then search a virtual world monster, and then after that send one monster. There are unique caveats to this card. Basically, it's a searcher. That's good, but the discard is kind of awkward. You might not notice it in the beginning when you play this deck. You might not realize it, but this card is a hindrance. Okay, it's a hindrance when it comes to the discard. It's not bad, by the way. You have to play 3, but that discard, man, it becomes quite annoying. Then we have 3 Virtual Gate Chuchi. Now, Virtual Gate Chuchi has the effect that you can target one face-up card on the field, shuffle 2 of your banished virtual cards. These cards have to be face-up, by the way, with different names from each other into the deck, then destroy that card. Now, it doesn't have to be into the main deck, it can be into the extra deck as well, if you're a little bit confused on that. And during your main phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one virtual monster you control. Increase or decrease is the level or rank by 3 until the end of this turn. Now, Virtual Chuchi is exceptionally important. It's the only card, it's the card that allows us to consistently go into Zolkin. It is a card that gives us the best chances against certain matchups, and it is absolutely crucial that you play this card at 3. If you're playing Desires, if you're not playing Desires and you're playing Prosperity, then you would usually run 2 Chuchi, 2 King Long, 2 Nyan. It cuts space, but again, I already mentioned what the differences are there. So what else? There's nothing really else to say about King Chuchi. Oh yes, Chuchi is required for Zolkin. The level manipulation comes in extremely clutch, because the level manipulation allows us to do some really funny things. And then we have Virtual Gate Swan Wu. Oh, it's another thing about Chuchi. Sometimes Chuchi, you'll use Chuchi to pop your own monsters. I've seen people use Chuchi to pop Shinchin so that they can dodge Shadow Fusion, and that is a viable strat. Don't worry. And also, when you're going against evenly matched, it can also be beneficial to pop one of your cards with Chuchi. Chuchi is just an amazing card. Not as good as it used to be because you before we could dodge VFD with Chuchi. As if your opponent activates Dark Road no more, you can have Chuchi as Chain Link 2 targeting say Dark Road no more, and then you could have VFD effect as Chain Link 3. Remember, traps can respawn, traps and spells can respawn to Dark Road no more, and then you can subsequently utilize VFD or any monster effect afterwards. It's a little caveat. And then we get the worst trap that we have, Virtual Gate Zwanwu. Now Zwanwu is terrible, or the on-field effect is terrible, and that is that during the battle phase, if you control another Virtual Gate card, you can target one face-up monster on the field, change its battle position. During your main phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one virtual monster in your graveyard, special summon it but negate its effect, then send one card from your hand to the graveyard. You can only use each effect of Virtual Gate Zwanwu once per turn. You can only activate one Virtual Gate Zwanwu per turn. Now, oh my god, this card. I don't know why this card was actually made. I'm gonna be straight up with you. The on-board effect is trash. First of all, it's useless against links. It will almost always, or you will almost never see play. You will only see this card played in 1 out of 10 duels with Virtual World, and that's when things are going really rough. You never want to place this card with Virtual Gate City Kowloon. You never want to do that. This card will always be sent to the graveyard, and it will always be sent off to Chuchi. This card will probably be banished with part of his eyes. All in all, this card is trash. There are some things necessary for this card. The board to make Shinchin, Crystal Wing, Kaliga, and Chuchi. It's only possible with Zwanwu. But that's rare, and it's just as rare as actually having this card work for you. Anyway, I don't like this card. Just play one copy. Doesn't matter if you're playing Desires with it. Play one copy. It's just a virtual name to send, and it has sometimes a good effect in the graveyard. And then we have one of my tech cards. They can be only one. Now, they can be only one needs no introduction. Basically, you and your opponent can only control one type of monster, one monster of each type. So why would you play this card in Virtual World, you might be asking? And the reason we play this card in Virtual World is because we do not really get hindered by there can be only one that much if we play correctly. There can be only one can be dodged because of our Exotic toolbox, so we don't really fear it. The other thing is that there can be only one is really good into top tier decks, except for maybe Shaddoll Invoked, and I think the other one is Sprankets. Those two decks aren't really hindered by there can be only one, but we also aren't hindered, so why not just main deck it? If you go against Dragon Link or you go against Dinos, this card becomes absolutely crucial and can absolutely win you games. So why not run it, right? Yeah, this card was single-handedly carrying Brankets for a time. So yeah, why not? Anyway, let's get into the exit deck, the fun part of every single Virtual World deck, right? And that is, we are running Fortune Tune, and Fortune Tune exists primarily to go into Zeus. Now, Fortune Tune I used to run with Downed Magician, and the reason I don't run Fortune Tune with Downed Magician is primarily because it's very rare to get 4 material Zeus off a Fortune Tune. Exceptionally rare. I don't think it can be done consistently. The thing about Fortune Tune is you have to be prepared to take some damage. You also have to be prepared to detach, because like this card does not at all usually get overcards, and it doesn't usually it's not supposed to survive that, so it always has to detach, almost always. The only time you don't have to detach with Fortune Tune, I'm sorry, my god, it's like a tongue twister. The only time you don't have to detach with Fortune Tune is when you attack a defense position monster, or you attack a monster that Fortune Tune can get over, but Fortune Tune only has 400 attack, so good luck with that. So Fortune Tune is the safest way to get into Zeus. It is also the most guaranteed way. Remember that Fortune Tune cannot be targeted, and because it cannot be targeted and it cannot basically be destroyed, it is guaranteed into Zeus most of the time. The only way they can stop Fortune Tune is if they had cards that didn't target and bounce, that were quick effects. Although to my knowledge there is not really anything that can do that on your turn, and Fortune Tune could theoretically be stopped by actually I don't know. I don't think there's. Oh yes, Murder Force stuff. Anything that can bounce Fortune Tune stops it. But remember, they cannot target it, and this card cannot be destroyed. Well, it can be if they were to. Yeah, the issue with this card is that I just came to realize right now while I was sitting here. If this card attacks into a monster, they try to pop Fortune Tune with non-targeting destruction. Well, then Fortune Tune would kind of be useless, because then you'd have to waste a detach, and you'd have to attack into it, and then you get no detach, and then you'd have a 1 materials use, which is not ideal at all. It's actually probably not even good to make Fortune Tune. And then, oh my god, I'm spending too much time on Fortune Tune, and oh my god, my tongue twister, I apologize. Then we get into the Phantom Knights of Breaksword. Now the Phantom Knights of Breaksword, we do not use the second effect, which is to special summon Phantom Knight monsters with the same level in your graveyard, because we don't run any Phantom Knights. But we do use its first effect, which is to detach 1 material from this card, then target 1 card you control and 1 card your opponent controls, it destroy them. Now this effect is pretty good, and we use it kind of clutch. So the thing about Breaksword is you're usually targeting your own Kinglong, your own Chuchi, or your own, there can be only one, or your own virtual card. Basically you're going to be targeting your continuous cards, right? Your continuous traps, your continuous spells. Out of those though, the two that you least want to target is there can be only one and virtual Chuchi. I would always recommend keeping there can be only one as long as you can possibly do it, as long as you possibly can, because you really aren't hindered by there can be only one, and it's way more beneficial to have it on your field than to have it in the graveyard. Chuchi, you don't usually want to target this card because Chuchi is always better on field than in the graveyard. Like, okay, Chuchi is only really good going in the graveyard in certain applications, but it's always going to be live with on field. It's always going to be better on field. Oh my god, I'm messing up so badly. I apologize. I'm speaking off the cuff here, and I'm going kind of fast because I'm looking at the time, and this video is around 26 minutes, and I think you guys have a life. Anyway, oh yes, and this card is also entrance into Zeus. All these cards are basically entrance into Zeus. They're all in one way or another. Concealer predominantly, of course, but some of them are just better to go into Zeus, like Fortune Tune. Then we have Concealer predominantly M7. Again, mispronouncing it, but yikes. Okay, so Concealer predominantly M7 is a card that basically allows you to detach your material and then bounce any card from the field or graveyard into your hand. Now you're not usually going to be targeting your opponent's monsters to bounce. You're usually going to be targeting a monster in your graveyard, and it's always good to bounce cards like Ash Blossom, and if you're running Lancia, then you can bounce Lancia, because these cards are really impactful. High impact hand traps are always better to bounce with M7, so keep that in mind. M7 is crucial, kind of. You could run in place of it Fan, but I do not really like Fan because Fan is primarily good into matchups, into control matchups, like such as let's say Eldritch, or I don't know, Shadows. I don't know. I don't like Fan that much, but Fan is a safe bet and probably cheaper, I guess. Then we have Utopic Beyond. Utopic Beyond is something that exists to get over cards like Dragoon, and go into Zeus, or format Zeus. Utopic Beyond has a unique thing where its effect doesn't require detach, and it makes all your opponent's monsters go into 0, so you can get over Dragoon. You'd have to either bait a Dragoon negate prior to utilizing its effect. And then from Utopia Beyond, you go into Gaia Dragon the Thunder Charge, which primarily exists to get over as a rank up for Utopia Beyond, and this may only exists so that you can have a 4 material Sky Thunder's use. There's no real special interaction with using this deck, and that's because, well, we aren't really Zodiacs, and that's probably the only deck that has a really special interaction with Sky Thunder's use. Oh my god, I am really sorry that you have to listen to this. Sweet mother of God, I am messing up. Anyway, we then have, I'm not going, okay, wait, let's get into the big boy. Ultimia Tzolk'in. Now Tzolk'in, I'm not going to explain its effect. Basically, you have 2 monsters that are the same level, that are level 5 or above, 1 tuner, 1 non-tuner. You send them to the graveyard and you special summon this bad boy. Now we can make this card exceptionally easily. The easiest way to make it is to utilize Lily and Lily and Lulu. That's the easiest way to make it. They can basically play into each other. If you have Lulu with another card, you can probably go into Tzolk'in. Now, the thing about Tzolk'in is you usually want to utilize Lulu's what is that effect? You usually want to utilize Lulu to search something like Walloon, and the reason for that is you want to have a guaranteed set for Tzolk'in. And I will explain that when I do a combo, when I do a hand test hand video, which will be soon. I didn't want to do it in this video. I apologize, but we're going 30 minutes in, and I genuinely don't know if you guys are even interested to see that. I don't even know if you guys are even here at this point. If you are, I apologize, and I will be making a video coming soon. I always say that, and sometimes I don't go through with it, but you know, it's COVID life. Yeah. So you basically set a monster, then you can special summon a level 8 Dragon Synchro, and the level 8 Dragon Synchro we decide to summon is, of course, Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. Now, Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, you could swap this out if you can't afford it or whatever. I think this card has gone up though, but Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon is really good, and it's always really good paired with Mud Dragon and Kaliga. Okay, so Mud Dragon basically it's a fusion substitute card. You summon this bad boy, you can utilize it as a fusion substitute, but the other card must be the correct fusion monster, and usually you'll have this card fusion with Tzolk'in to go into Kaliga or Dragoon. So on the issue of Dragoon and Kaliga, I am all for Kaliga. I stand Kaliga. I think Kaliga is always better going blind, and if you had to choose one of the two to get rid of and you exit it, it would be Dragoon. The issue with Dragoon is usually just a body, and that body is kind of lackluster. Remember that Dragoon cannot pop any cards because it had no normal monsters used for its summon, so you cannot pop any of your opponent's monsters, and it's basically a big body on board that can't be targeted and cannot be destroyed by card effects. Yeah, that's why it exists. Kaliga, on the other hand, this bad boy paired with Crystal Wing, deadly combo. Basically, if you have Kaliga with Crystal Wing and your opponent activates a monster effect, you could negate that monster effect with Crystal Wing, and then your opponent would not be able to activate any other monster effect. Remember that Kaliga only allows the attempt of one monster effect. So yeah, also Kaliga can be negated by your own King Long. So if you have Kaliga and you're thinking, oh my god, this card is exceptionally annoying for me, I can't deal with it, I can't go for game, well, just negate it with King Long, bro. That's all you gotta do. Then we have virtual, no, it's not, yes, Shinshin. Okay, virtual QB Shinshin. Shinshin is an amazing card. Mini Macrocosmos. For cards on field, they will be Spanish instead. Cool things to note about this card: droplets cannot send a card from field to graveyard. For cost, for Shinshin, they would have to send cards from their hand. This card is amazing in certain matchups, amazing against control decks, and usually the control decks that it's really good at into is Eldritch. Another thing to know about Virtual QB Shinshin is that it is also really good into Prankets. This card and Chuchi could probably win you the entire duel, realistically. Shinshin itself is really annoying for Prankets to deal with unless they have a means of banishing it from the graveyard, and usually they don't. Shinshin is amazing. You can learn more Shinshin. Never too little Shinshin in your life, by the way, never too little. Then we have Vermilion Dragon Mech. Now you need Vermilion Dragon Mech. It is the only other level 9 we are going to be running, and the reason for that is, well, there aren't really a lot of good level 9s. Now, if you were to run Cloud Castle, then you would have to run a level 9 Synchro, and that would usually be Intel Metal, which is the rank 9 that allows you to banish a card from graveyard, hand, or field, or banish a card from the top of your opponent's deck. I don't run my card, and this, I don't know why I don't run it actually. I probably could run it, but then I would have to. But again, you need Cloud Castle with that card. You basically do, and Cloud Castle is amazing, by the way. If you can afford it, run it. I will probably maybe I will decide to change Dragoon, but I don't know right now. Anyway, Vermilion Dragon Mech has a few caveats in the stick. Basically, since you can banish one tuner from your hand, graveyard, or face up field and target one card on the field to destroy, it's pretty good because you can banish Lulu, and why you banish Lulu is for the second effect. If the synchro summon card is destroyed by card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can toggle one of your banished units and add it to your hand. Now the thing about this is you cannot activate this effect if you utilize Cloud Castle to reborn Vermilion Dragon mech. You can only utilize it on its first effect, and you can even trigger it yourself, which some people have done, and it was usually a really cool play last format, was to utilize Shuchi to pop Vermilion Dragon mech, or have Vermilion Dragon mech destroy itself to regain Lulu or Lala. Now this is a really convoluted combo, and maybe I probably will go into it in my test hands, but basically this used to happen because if you had a really awkward hand where you only had Lulu and say Lao, this would come in really clutch for you to actually utilize the effects. So yeah, then we have the two removals in level 6 form, Juju and Coral Dragon. Coral Dragon comes in clutch because it can also be utilized for Zolkin. Sometimes you cannot go into the Lulu and Lily combo, and if you forgot, Lulu plus Lily usually works because you can use Chuchis to increase Lulu's levels. So anyway, Coral comes in clutch because sometimes it's a draw. That's good. Draw hand advantage is an issue in this deck, as I said previously. It can also act as a means of removal, which is pretty good. However, the discard is kind of iffy. But if you don't like discarding, well, say hello to the bad boy Juju. Juju is kind of better than Coral Dragon for a couple of reasons. The biggest reason is that it's a virtual card. The second biggest reason is that Juju kind of can't be destroyed by card effect or battle, if of course you have 2 or more monsters in your graveyard with the same original type and attribute but different names. Now that comes up pretty easily in this deck. Remember, we are a deck consisting of earth monsters that are worm and psychic monsters that are wind. Like, it's really easy. I apologize for that cough. Yeah, it's easy, and the removal is also less of a hindrance than Coral Dragon, because you can just banish 2 monsters from your graveyard with the same original type and attribute, but different names, of course. Another thing I forgot to mention is that Shen has the effect that you can banish 2 monsters with different types and attributes and different names to special summon itself. It's way easier to have Shen live to special summon itself than it is to have Juju. Anyway, that is the video. I went really fast because I really think I'm wasting a lot of time, and I don't think a lot of you want to really sit through that, and that's why I'm going to add the combo video as the next upload. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your day. If you like this video, like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Thank you. Bye.